have all gone inside the Apple Store to play with the new innovations to discover what new features is offered in the iPhone or iPod. Their simplicity and practicality have made these high-tech products into pieces of art, captivating the beholder of any of these products. But how did these products get here, and more importantly, at what human cost?
The company started off selling just PC or personal computers. Despite strong and rapid growth and high profits in the late 1990s, Apple almost went bankrupt in 1996. His mastermind, Steve Jobs, went to work transforming Apple Computer into Apple Inc., with innovative non-PC products starting in the early 2000s. In fact, by 2010, the company viewed itself as a mobile device company. In the 2010 fiscal year, sales related to the iPhone and iPod represented nearly 60% of Apple's total sales of $43 billion and net income of $14 billion. In 2011, net income was almost $26 billion, and the last year, 2012, Apple had a net income of $43 billion, which means the company has grown considerably. Now, that is just a good side of Apple. What not too many people see is how his profits are made. The New York Times just recently showed an article describing how Apple treats its workers in China. When I read the article, all it came to my mind was the word slavery. Apple, just as many other companies, knows how to take great advantage of the situation in China. The average pay, including overtime, for a Chinese worker in one of the Apple manufacturers is $22 a day, and they have to work about 12 hours per day, 6 days a week. Now, isn't the word slavery a good definition for Apple workers in China? Apple Inc. has demonstrated to have a great potential by developing one of the most successful businesses in the world, but it carries on its record the suffering and exploitation of many human beings.
The spread of globalization brought United States companies to China. We have often focused on how the Chinese government was suppressing workers' struggles and not enforcing existing labor laws. But in a globalized world, the Chinese government is no longer the only or even the major actor in this regard. Foreign companies are exploiting millions of Chinese workers. China plays a key role in setting global wage norms. It is the linchpin of what Morgan Stanley chief economist Stephen Roach has called global labor arbitrage, in which corporations move from one labor market to another to take advantage of the cheap labor. The result is a global race to the bottom, in which workers and their communities are put into competition with each other to see who can provide the lowest cost labor and the most corporate-friendly conditions. According to Roach, this labor arbitrage is also now acting as a powerful structural depressant on traditional sources of job creation in high-wage countries such as the United States. Public policy in the United States and other countries has allowed these corporations to realize immense benefits from the low pay and poor conditions under which their Chinese workers work. These policies have been justified largely on the grounds that foreign corporations operating in China would elevate labor and human rights standards. But these corporations have not done so, and it is ironically that the Chinese government that now wants to improve the situation. By opposing a labor contract reform law that would elevate labor and human rights standards, American and other foreign companies are aggravating the very conditions they claim they would improve. Corporations and businesses, organizations in China, and their political allies should hold their original promises to improve the conditions for the Chinese workers. They should immediately reverse their opposition to the draft labor code and publicly support further legislations to ensure the basic human rights of Chinese workers, to organize, choose their own leaders, bargain, and strike. Here's an issue that links the interests of workers not only in the United States and China, but everywhere. Higher wages, better working conditions, and the right to organize independent unions will help workers everywhere to draw a line against the race to the bottom. There is no need to travel to Beijing to fight for the rights of the Chinese workers. The headquarters of these corporations exploiting Chinese workers are in the United States and other countries around the world. Taking in consideration the Declaration of Human Rights, we raise the question if we will support the rights of the workers in China or the profits of the United States corporations.
The Fair Labor Association, also known as FLA, is a collaborative effort of universities, civil society organizations, and socially responsible companies dedicated to protecting workers' rights around the world. From coffee and electronics to apparel and footwear, most of the products we enjoy and use every day are made by men and women in factories and on farms around the world. These workers harvest the cotton used to make our shirts, sew buttons and zippers onto our jackets, grow the cocoa our children drink, and make high-tech soles for our running shoes. Unfortunately, many of them work in deplorable conditions. The products we buy should not come at the cost of workers' rights. Since 1999, FLA has helped improve workers' lives by holding affiliated companies accountable for implementing FLA codes of conduct across their supply chains, conducting external assessments so that consumers can be assured of the integrity of the products they buy, creating a space for CSOs to engage with companies and other stakeholders to find viable solutions to labor concerns. Apple and the Fair Labor Association. In 2012, Apple became the first electronics company to be admitted to the Fair Labor Association. In February 2012, Apple asked the FLA to conduct special voluntary audits of their biggest final assembly suppliers, including Foxconn, factories in Shenzhen and Chengdu, China. With unrestricted access to their operations, the FLA completed one of the most comprehensive and detailed assessments in the history of manufacturing, in scale, in scope, and in transparency. This independent assessment covered an estimated of 178,000 workers and included interviews with 35,000 workers. On March 28, the FLA published detailed reports on what it found with recommendations for improving conditions for workers. After a thorough independent investigation, significant issues were found with working conditions at the three factories. The Fair Labor Association secured groundbreaking commitments that reduce working hours to legal limits while protecting pay, improve health and safety conditions, establish a genuine voice for workers, and will monitor on an ongoing basis to verify compliance. The nearly month-long investigation found excessive overtime and problems with overtime compensation, several health and safety risks, and crucial communication gaps that have led to a widespread sense of unsafe working conditions among workers. FLA's investigation found that within the last 12 months, all three factories exceeded both the FLA code standard of 60 hours per week and the Chinese legal limits of 40 hours per week and 36 hours maximum overtime per month. During peak production periods, the average number of hours worked per week exceeded 60 hours per worker. There were periods in which some employees worked more than 7 days in a row without the required 24 hours off. In addition, a considerable number of workers felt concerned about the protection of their health and safety. More than 43% of the workers report that they have experienced or witnessed an accident. These accidents range from hand injuries to factory vehicle accidents. Foxconn has committed to be more inclusive of workers in health and safety monitoring and decisions. Apple and Foxconn accepted the FLA's findings and recommendations and created a robust 15-month action plan with defined target dates of completion.
In 1987, Thomas Petterfee created the first automated Wall Street trading system, and ever since, technological advancements have exponentially increased automation and increasingly replaced employees. ATMs replaced bank tellers, e-commerce replaced the sales clerks, and self-checkouts in supermarkets have reduced the cashiers. So which jobs are exactly being taken? MIT economist David Outdoor argues that there's been a hollowing out of the labor market. High-skilled and high-paying jobs, as well as the poorly compensated service industry, remains with their jobs, but the jobs being lost to automation are those that are highly structured and repetitive. In the following 60 Minutes report, we see how robots are now taking over in typical warehouses.
Customer orders are transmitted from a computer to Wi-Fi antennas that direct the robots to the merchandise, guiding them across an electronic checkerboard with barcodes embedded in the floor panels. Once the robot arrives at its destination, it picks up an entire shelf of merchandise and delivers it to the packing station. It then speeds off to its next assignment.
So as we realize that robots are able to complete a task efficiently and quickly, it comes as no shock that the CEO of Foxconn has announced that 1 million robots will be added to the factory lines. No doubt, automation is due to demand from its clients such as Apple and Nintendo to produce their products quickly and without labor scandals. In Christina Larson's article, Migrant Workers in China Face Competition from Robots, a Taipei-based analyst, Jamie Wang, states that one robot could replace up to 4 workers. And these robots would be more efficient due to their lasers or pressure sensors that inform the machine when to begin and end a job. MIT professor Eric Runofson notes that automation has taken jobs at an unprecedented speed, which has not given employees a chance to retrain. And reality is that technological companies such as Apple, Amazon, Facebook, and Google don't require as much employees. Combined, these giants' market capitalization is of $1 trillion, but they employ fewer than 150,000 people. And demand for automation is on the rise. This is apparent by Amazon's $775 million purchase of Kiva Systems because of the reduction of labor requirements brought upon their warehouse. And now China has also increased its purchases of advanced industrial robots as is shown in this graph. In just a year, purchases jumped 50%, and it's predicted that China will surpass Japan. But China is conflicted by the benefits of automation and the increase in unemployment rates automation brings. Chief engineer at China Railroad Tunnel Group admits that in certain fields they don't want fast development. This would stump the harmonious society caused by high employment rates. With an unemployment rate of 8.05%, talks of automation are seriously discouraged because, as strategic communications and IT analyst David Wolf states, automation is the beginning of the end of the factory girl. So what's the solution? We interviewed Miami-Dade College economics professor David Mann to answer this question. Foxconn is adding 1 million robots to factory lines. What effect will large-scale replacement of labor due to increase in automation have on China's unemployment rate?
One way you can try to answer that is by looking at how increased technology has impacted unemployment in other countries. Here, there isn't a sustained link between technological advancement and unemployment. In the short run, yes, rapid technological advances can be disruptive as some labor becomes obsolete. However, those same advances create new opportunities for higher skilled labor and also new opportunities to fulfill an increased demand for services resulting from higher incomes. This helps explain why in the United States technological advancement has led to much fewer manufacturing jobs, but has not been met with persistent unemployment overall. China faces a similar situation. Employment in the manufacturing sector there is much less than it was 20 years ago, and promises to decline even more as productivity increases. China's share of GDP from consumption is very low compared to the US, so rapid technological change may be more disruptive there and cause some acute increases in unemployment in some of the most vulnerable areas in the short term. What happens in the long term, though, is undetermined as it is for most other places in the world.
What would be a solution to China's unemployment rate?
As mentioned, China's consumption is very low, but it is growing tremendously and comprising an increasing share of GDP. This suggests that the familiar pattern of wealthier workers demanding more goods and services may hold. Hundreds of millions of Chinese are rising out of poverty, and with their increased incomes bring a desire for a variety of goods and services they could not afford before. This potentially can spur hiring, and it's not unreasonable to think that many people who lost their manufacturing jobs can find gainful employment, meeting the new demands of a wealthier population. This presumes, of course, that China can retain the added wealth gained from the increased technology, which is not necessarily the case as more manufacturing jobs come back to more developed nations.
Reshoring is becoming more and more prevalent. What effect would this have on the Chinese economy?
If reshoring occurs and more manufacturing comes back to places like the United States, China will need to increase competitiveness in order to attract more business, because the relative cost of doing business there has increased so much over the years, especially costs as it relates to bringing the products to market, warehousing, quality control, and even though labor costs are still relatively cheap, those have also been increased.
Perhaps we may no longer have to worry about what lives were put in danger so that we may read our books on our iPad or iPhones, because manufacturing may return to US soil but to automated factories. Or perhaps China will remain cheaper than in the US. But what is guaranteed is that automation is progress, and progress can't be stopped. Therefore, companies must educate and retrain their workers to work alongside these robots, such as nurses and doctors with the tugs in hospitals, or educate them to attain the high-paying, high-skilled jobs that robots can't replace.